In this video, we're going to cover Lab 6, a lab on vulnerabilities. In the lab sheet, we go through the basics of vulnerabilities, and it's worth reading that, and also covering how we find it. We're going to look at a web application and look for some of the Owasp top 10 web vulnerabilities. So from the lectures, we will have gone through what those vulnerabilities are. But the leading one is injection, and that covers things like Sql injection, remote code injection, things, that type of attack. Broken authentication, and we'll cover that in this lab. Sensitive data exposure, and a whole list of others. We'll be using a web application which has been purposely built to highlight these Owasp vulnerabilities. And we're only going to be looking at a few of them, but if you wanted to, you could actually look for some of the other vulnerabilities that are in this. There are, I think, 20 or so in total, and the application will tell you when you found those vulnerabilities. So to start it, we're going to run another container. So let's just copy that and paste it in and run that. Now, I'm running on a Mac. If you are running on Windows, you would be running this in a PowerShell window. And of course, if you want to run another container, you would just start another PowerShell window. So we've got the Juice Shop that's running on port 3000. So if we go 3000, it gives us the web application. And being a web application with etc., some messages, and then we can dismiss that. And you could explore this manually, but we're going to use a tool called Zap. So the instructions tell us that we can access that URL. We've done that. To search for the vulnerabilities, we're going to use Owasp Zap, which is a vulnerability scanning tool. You can run this by installing it on your computer, or you can run it from a container. So I will look at running it from a container, just that's likely what you're going to do. So we'll copy that and paste that in, and then run that. We can access now the Zap tool by using that URL and put that in a new tab. So start that. When that's started up, it will ask you whether you want to persist the session. That means whether you want to save all of the details of your scan. At the moment, we're not concerned about that, so you can select whatever you like, but I say no. And let's click Start. It will ask you if you want to update everything, and that's important to do. So we want to update all of the plugins and libraries that it uses to scan websites. So we go down to the bottom here and click Update All. And that's, you can close this dialog if your downloading will carry on. It's updating, it doesn't take very long, and it's pretty much done, so we can close that now. Right, to do the scan, let's go back and see what the instructions say. So, first thing we need to do is put the scanner into attack mode, and we do that by going to the drop down in the top left hand corner and click attack mode. The next thing we need to do is to scan, put the URL in for the Juice Shop, the website that we're scanning. Now if we're running it from your own desktop, you would use this URL, but if we're running it now from a container, then we need to use that one. So we'll take that and we'll say automated scan and scroll that down a bit and put that URL in. So that's okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an Ajax spider. And so we need to click that, and then it has a number of options of browsers that it will use to emulate. And it's by default set on Firefox headless. We can leave it on that. So let's just put this over here, and we can stretch this out a bit. and then we can start the attack. Oops, it's got rid of that for some reason. And off it will go. Now, as it starts, it will use a traditional spider to search for some URLs, and it will give you a whole bunch of output as it looks through that, and then eventually it will start using the Ajax spider, and you should see this tab. And what you should see is a lot of output coming in this window. If it's not, then it's not working. Now if we go to the left hand side and go to sites, and we see the site host.docker internal 3000, we get a list of all of the URLs that it's found already, including this one, which is API. And you can see it will add dynamically as it goes along. So as we're doing that, the scan will take a longish time, but you will notice that Juice Shop has popped up green alerts announcing that you've solved 2 channels. Let's have a look at that. And yes, we've solved 2 challenges. One is we've accessed a confidential document, and the other is that we've provoked an unsolicited error, and it's not handled properly by the web page. And so those are 2 vulnerabilities that we have seen. So we can actually look back on here, and we can look down for the confidential document. So let's go back to the lab sheet, and it says what we've seen is the FTP node that is appearing, and this is file transfer protocol for sharing files, and essentially this shouldn't be accessible from a web page, and it should be behind at least some authentication, but it should actually be using more secure methods of sharing files. There is a flag in a file called acquisitions.md, so we can actually go back here. We can look at FTP node, which is here, expand that, and here are all the documents that we have available. Let's just stretch this out a bit, and we can stretch that out. And so we can click on the acquisitions file. Over on the right, you can see that in the scan window, there is a tab for requests. These are the requests that was actually sent, and here is the response. And this will show you the contents of the file, including the first flag, which I'll blur out. The second error is one where there is an exception, and it's a server 500 error, which means that this has thrown an exception. And if we go back to here, we should be able to click on the active SAN and see the error here, but it won't show up until the scan is over. And unfortunately, this takes actually quite a long time. So we've actually got enough pretty much that we want. Normally you would leave this running, but once you've got all of these different sections, including the API, there's one that's missing that will eventually turn up if you let it run for long enough, but we're going to actually stop it. So we can actually stop the attack, and it will take a little bit of time because it queues up a number of threads, and you can see that we've got now in the active scan a whole bunch of code that's appeared. So if we can highlight the error, which is the server error, and it shows you the error that it got in response here, and you can see it in in better format if you want to, by copying that URL and putting it in a browser and having a look at it. But that's a couple of things that we've done. So getting admin access. What we're going to do now is go back to the Juice Shop, and we'll dismiss these challenges. And what we'd normally do if we were investigating this for vulnerabilities is that we would look around and familiarize ourselves with the site, look at the tabs that are available. There's things like customer feedback. Here we see that on the right-hand window that there is an account login. So we can go to that, and there's a variety of different things that you could do here. For example, you could put in just test admin and click login, and that's not correct. It's actually looking for an email, so let's say admin@gshop.com. Click that, and that's not correct. So one thing that it's potentially vulnerable to is a SQL injection attack. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in a character, a little quote, single quote mark, and then we'll put 1 or 1 equals 1, and then those characters. What this is this is actually a SQL statement. And so what we've done with the single quote mark is we've terminated whatever it's going to do with that username when it gets into the code. And then we've added some other code which says, or 1 equals 1, which means that it'll always be true. And then we've put this comment character after it, which will basically render anything that comes after this statement. It will make it ignored. So if we go back here, we can see that it's asked us to do this. And there's an explanation as to why this worked. Because if we take this code, which is a select statement that's used where we're looking at email and password from the users table. So we're looking for any user that has the email equal to whatever's passed in the email box, and the password that's passed in the password box, and that it's not deleted. Once we put in our characters, this is what happens. It gets substituted, and we get this instead. So it says, select star from users where email equals nothing, and that of course will fail, or 1 equals 1, which is always true, and it will just select something from the users. Now, by default, that will be the very first entry in the table, and we're hoping that that very first entry is the admin user. So if we now log in, and we can say remember me if we want, and there we go. So now we've got another flag, or another challenge solved, where we've got in as the administrator. And now we have a basket. There are other things that have shown up, and we can go back here. And now that you are logged in, enter the admin email address for the flag. And so all we need to do is go to here, and you can see that. I'll give you that one because basically it's very easy. So that's that part. We're now logged in as admin. The next thing we're going to do is use the API to actually create a user and give them the admin role. Normally we would see this user's function turning up in Zap, but it has a number of features that we can get an idea of what they do. For example, challenges. If we get and click on that, the response is information about the challenges that are available in GShop, quantities and security questions. So they're all related to various functionality that the API provides. One of them is called users, and as I said, you would normally get that from a scan, or you could actually just guess it and test it, and we'll sort of see how that actually works. Now, if it shows up, we can actually just click on one of the get, for example, and go here, and then right click and say open resend with request editor. Now we don't have the users one, so it doesn't really matter. Just click on any of the ones that show up here, and just type open, or click on open resend with request editor. So we've got that there, and we get this details of the request, which is to get of this URL, and these are all the header fields that come in, the things that modify that request and give details to the client, to the server, about what we're actually doing and how we're doing it. So in here we've got API. Let's just change the last bit here to users, and we can now just click send. What we get though is a 401 unauthorized, and it says no authorization header was found. So one of the ways that APIs essentially authorize is to use an authorization header. So we put authorization, and that's the header name, and there's a bearer, and it's called bearer token. Now we need to get the bearer token, and we can do that by stealing the bearer token for the admin account that we've managed to log in here. So we're now in as the regular admin. So we can right click on the page here and go down to inspect. Now all browsers have this feature of a web developer kit. They're slightly different in their layouts. This is Chrome. There's another video that I posted of this which uses Firefox. But if we click on application here, it might be called storage, and we go down, we can see that there is a field called storage. And if we click on the local host, this is where all of the cookies are actually saved. And so interestingly, it sort of thinks that the email address is our injection attack, but this is the thing that we're interested in, which is down here. So if we highlight that and copy it, we can go back now and put paste. No, that doesn't work. For some reason the container doesn't like paste here, so we go up to the Chrome paste and paste there. And so we have now an authorization token, which is of the admin user that will give us the privileges to do various things using this API. So if we now send it, what we get is a list of all of the users that exist in Juice Shop. Now this in and of itself is essentially a bad problem for the Juice Shop because we've managed to get a list of all the users. It doesn't contain the passwords, so there's some aspect of it which is okay, but still pretty bad anyway. If we go back to the request, normally with APIs there's the GET request which does a read, but there is also a POST request. So we can change that to POST, and we can use this, and normally it's used to create users. Now if we go back to the lab sheet and go down, it gives you all of the details here, and also tells you how to get to the developers tool and using the request header. Now what we're going to do now is do a post, and we're going to create a new user. So we're going to take this data here and copy that, and we're going to paste that into the data portion of this window. So go up and paste. And so that's creating another admin user with the email of admin, password admin, and the role, which is the important thing, which is the thing called admin. Now you'd find all of this out by experimentation, knowing how applications work, and then we would do it that way. Now one other thing that we need to do before we send this off is, if we look at this request here, there is a no, there isn't. We have to, if we send this and try it, it won't work. We need to have another header which is content type, and we need to set that to application JSON for that to work. If you don't put that header in, it won't know how to interpret this data, and it won't do it properly. So now that we've got that, we can just click send, and we've got a result back, and it's a 201 result, and it's basically said ID is 21. Now that should have been okay. If we go back to Juice Shop, actually we can see you successfully solved a challenge admin registration, register a user with admin privileges. You've successfully solved a trash and repetitive registration, etc. So those are a couple of things that we do. So we know that that's worked reasonably well, but we want to check it anyway. So let's just do a get and click that, and then we'll look through the list of users, and hopefully if everything is going okay, we've got our user down here, which is ID 21, admin, admin. And so as a final check, what we'll do is log out of this. Let's get rid of these messages, go back in to login, and let's type in admin and then the password, oops, admin, and click in, and we've logged in. And let's Chrome being annoying. And so we're now in as the user admin. If we click on that, it will give us some details. And that's it. Now, as a final thing, we get a fun little flag, which is get help from support. Go into the support chat and tell JuicyBot your name. And then ask the bot to please sing me a song. So we go in here, let's go back, click on the little hamburger icon here and go to support chat. And JuicyBot is here and it says, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. What shall I call you? And say admin. It says, nice to meet you, admin. I'm Juicy. And we can say, sing me a song. No song, but here is the flag instead. And it will give you the flag. And I will blur out the flag, but I was very proud of myself when I did this, and I hope you enjoy it as well. That's it for Lab 6, and we'll go to the next video and do Lab 7, which covers incidents. Thanks.